welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. This is the place where we take a no bullshit look at life's little lessons. Here, together, we find the spiritual glory in even the most wicked hard story. This is a journey from fear back to love and how we can find our greatest strength and happiness in some of the most unlikely places. I believe that if you're willing to change your mind, you can totally change your life. So, are you ready to rewrite your story and choose to live free? Let's do this. Oh my God, I'm wicked excited. I know I say that all the time, but it's always genuinely true, especially when I have an awesome guest on. As you guys know, like most of my shows are solo shows. So if somebody is on here, there's a reason. So I either totally love them, dig the work that they're doing in the world, find them fascinating, I'm wicked curious about what they're doing, or whatever. But usually they're on here because I already love them in some way, even if I don't know them wicked good. There's something about their heart that calls to my heart, or their spiritual team that calls to my spiritual team. So this is how we find ourselves here today with Courtney Daniel. So look, I always just like to read the official bio so I don't leave out anything important, so that also we can kind of place you in time with Courtney and have a better understanding of who she is. So first of all, she's a creative strategist. So as soon as I've heard so many different things about her, and that's what got me really curious about her, but here we are. Creative strategist who lives by her own rules and makes things happen. Okay, I'm on board with that. As a nationally recognized award-winning business owner, her dedication and ability to build relationships has afforded her the opportunity to work with top-name celebrities in the industry. That's super fun. Courtney's love for design, this one just like, I was like so jazzed about this. Courtney's love for design won her national recognition for the United States Postal Service when she designed a postage stamp. Okay, have never in my life met somebody who's designed a postage stamp, so I'm wicked excited to learn a little more about that. She's been a guest on multiple podcasts, including So Money with Farnoosh Taroubi and Entrepreneur on Fire, which I know is a wicked popular podcast, so that's awesome. And her work has also been featured on Huffington Post as well as other publications. Courtney, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that bio? I think sometimes, bios are great. They help people get a sense of you, but I think they also kind of sometimes put us in little boxes. And I'm like, we're so much more than because our bios often also focus on like our accomplishments or how we make our money, like who we are. But what else do we maybe need to know about you that we don't know about you yet?
Oh, where should we start? I think the bio did sum it up, and I'm happy to be here to share with you a little bit more about me and who I am. And I'm excited to dive deeper into that. So we'll hear about.
Yeah. So for like a little thing. So you're a mom, you're a wife, and you live in the Seacoast area of New Hampshire, correct?
Yes.
But you did not start here. So we find ourselves here. So tell us a little bit about, and one of the things we're definitely going to dive into, which your bio did not say, is about the no to patterns. So that's the thing, like I'm wicked excited about. And so that's kind of the journey of where we came from to where we are now. So you didn't start in New Hampshire. So let's talk about like maybe a little bit about your childhood and how you found yourself becoming and doing all these amazing things that I just read.
Yeah, so I can always remember myself as a girl who was just shy, who didn't want any attention, who didn't want to be on the forefront, just wanted to stay behind the scenes and observe. I always call myself like a people watcher, an observer, just so you can see the actions of people and the things that they say, and you can kind of be a little judgmental without being vocal. It's kind of like would I want to be around that vibe? Okay, so no, maybe not. I wouldn't want to be around that person. So I've always been that person who's kept to myself, and if I was in a crowd, it was just like a solo, and that's what I really remember as being a little girl. With, if I'm on the playground, I would play by myself. But fast forward to me becoming that adult and teenager, I've always felt, or always been, that independent woman who wanted to have things and to work hard for it, and to always give 100% of what I was putting forward. And I can remember the first major accomplishment that I had was when I purchased my home. I think I was 20, and it was like, it was a Christmas gift. I was like, I am going to do it. Like, this is going to be for me. And from there, it seems like I just kind of continued to set goals and do things that I knew that I could do. And, not that anybody taught me this. It was just things that I was just inspired by, things that I wanted. And I knew that I had to put in the hard work to get them. So fast forward to how I got to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Georgia, and
you have a little bit of that Southern accent still. The flavor, that tone is still there.
Yeah. Just getting to New Hampshire, I visited once, and it was in August. It was so pretty. Got to walk on the beach, enjoy the sunshine. Mm-hmm. And although I've lived in other cities before outside of Georgia, when I came here, I was like, oh, this is just so peaceful. And I just felt like, oh, it was just so welcoming. And the first place that I went was to the ocean. And, if anybody knows me, they know that I do not do water at all. Like, water is like, no, thank you. I'll sit in the car. That's, that's how I am, because I don't know how to swim. So I was like, okay, if you don't know how to swim, why put yourself in those situations where you're around water? It doesn't make sense. Okay. So, but that was the first place I planted my feet, with my shoes with my feet in the sand and the water running through my toes. And from there, I was just in love with New Hampshire. And of course, when I went back home, it was introduced. My husband was like, do this visit. Let's see how you like it. So I'm in love. I go back to Georgia, and I was like, let's do this. Let's make this move. And how we, just a little bit more about how we kind of got here is that back home we work with celebrities and high profile clients as personal assistants. And one of his clients at the time would come to Atlanta and do events there for nonprofit fundraising. And he met her at an event that she was doing in Atlanta, and she liked his work ethic and the way that he operated and flowed and made sure that events was just smooth sailing. Mm-hmm. And so they built this relationship, and she's like, hey, why don't you start coming to coming to New Hampshire to do my events here, my nonprofit fundraisers here. And from there, they built this relationship, and she's like, hey, why don't you move to New Hampshire? And he's like, okay, well, let me just talk it over with my wife to see if we can, if it's something that she may be interested in. Mind you, beforehand, New Hampshire has never been on my radar. New Hampshire has never been like anything that I would even say like, oh yeah, let's consider moving to New Hampshire. It was like, no. And when he mentioned it, like New Hampshire, I was like, New Hampshire, where is that?
Right.
Like,
right.
And then when you pull it out and look on the map, it's like, okay, where is it? It's like you have to get a magnifying glass. And so, I did the research, and I was like, okay, maybe it's a great place to live. So we moved in November of 2012. I don't know where we were thinking about. And, I'm from the South. I don't know anything about how the weather goes, how snow or anything like that. So we moved in November. Here it is. I'm looking out of the window. I'm like, what is that on the ground? Like, where is my car, and who's going to get it out? Because I have to go to the store. It's like one of those, it was like, welcome to New Hampshire, like right away, like we're throwing you right into the wolves. And so that kind of like just that feeling of every day not being able to get out right away, not being able to open my door without having to put on 12 layers and get in the car. And, it was just trying to get acclimated to this new way of living, which I wasn't introduced to. I was introduced to the beach. I was introduced to the sun, to the sand, to the ocean. I was introduced to that. And then here it is, another like sprinkle on top of it. Like, hey, wait a minute, you forgot about this cold weather. And so just that part there has really, I think has really brought out the best of who I am, and has put me on the path to where I am leading now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really big change going from the South to the North for so many different reasons. But
Yeah.
then the change of seasons, and it can be so abrupt, like it's like it is hard. I mean, I was raised in New England and Massachusetts. I've lived in New Hampshire for a long time now, but I also lived in Los Angeles. I lived in California for 8 years, and everybody kept saying to me, "Aren't you gonna miss the change of seasons?" I was like, "No." Summer year round, like summer year round is like what I prefer. So like coming back here, and in fact, I want to move someplace warm again because I'm over it. Like I'm done with the cold. And I think being raised here, like you just said, like coming up, and of course you already had, I mean, based on the childhood story you told us, you were already hardworking. You were already like pretty aware. Like I think of that. I think most creative people, we are a little bit, call it the lone wolfish or the introvert, or we're quiet and we're, assessing things and looking at things. And Henry James, the writer, says it in a beautiful way. He says, try to be the kind of person upon whom nothing is lost. And I think that's kind of it. Like we're just kind of looking around, observing people, watching, like all those things. And I think though that growing up here, as a New Englander, especially as a Massachusetts kid, there is a kind of toughness that you develop, right? It's like this change of seasons. It's like, oh, tough shit if you don't feel like shoveling. There's like 8 inches out there. Get to it. You know what I mean? And especially if you're a kid who didn't have a lot of money. Like there was no plow guys when I was a kid. It was like you get out in the driveway and you did it yourself. So it's a really kind of like fascinating thing doing it in reverse, like coming from where it's warm. And then especially kind of like, not saying you got duped, but it's like August in New Hampshire on the Seacoast is like, come on, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, shit, what is, like you said, where's my car? Like, and everything just takes longer because now we got to put the layers on and we got to do all the stuff, right? So it's like, it's so hysterical to me. And so what I thought was really interesting is when you first came up for that visit in August, was it because your husband had been offered a gig and he wanted you to go check it out? Like, how did you get here that first visit? Like, was that why you were here, was to kind of like check out New Hampshire before you guys moved?
Yes, it was. That was the reason I was here. It's just to, hey, let's go check out the scenery to see if you like it, to see if it's something, you would even possibly consider. And just considering moving the kids here, although they were much younger and they would be like in preschool, which was kind of good as well. At least at the time, I thought it would be a good idea because they didn't have to worry about losing friends and, building those bonds that they had, maybe through middle school or elementary. And now we have to go and do that process all over again because now you're in a different state. So it was good at the time because they were much, much younger. So that was the visit here, is to get me sold, basically. And as I say, it was a setup because I was like, it was in August. Like you said, it's in August. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just like, who could not fall in love with that? If you're a person who likes to scenery, or you visualize things, or you can just see the earth's beauty for what it is. If that's you, of course you're gonna fall in love with it, right?
Yeah, your husband's no dummy. Like, he was smart. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. But let's circle back a little bit. When you talk about like buying your first house at like 20, like that's legit. Like that's no joke. I mean, there are some people who will rent their whole lives, and I'm not saying one's worse or better than the other, but I think just having a mortgage and making a financial commitment to own a home and doing it so young, like there has to be some sort of, call it drive or ambition or tenacity or whatever, to say like, all right, I'm going to do what I need to do. And the fact that that would be important to somebody that young, I always say to people, like, they'll be like, oh, my kid did this and da 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 da. I'm like, okay, look, brains don't even finish forming till like 22, 23, whatever. So for you to be in that place is pretty powerful. And I think part of this, the way that we've kind of talked about you a little bit already, about like getting things done and being determined and whatever, I mean, you've also had some hardships in your life. I mean, I know just a little bit about it, but do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about the loss of your sister?
Yeah, sure. So, I remember the day, just like it was yesterday, we were all headed to church. And so it was, I don't even think we were in church an hour. And I see my husband kind of like go out the back door to kind of like excuse himself. And he has the phone from another one of the administrators there, and they're talking and pass on the word like, hey, your aunt is calling because she needs you guys to come home. And home is, we're still in Georgia, so we're having to leave church. And we're kind of like, before we left, we wanted to find out like why, of course, because if someone's calling you to say, two
Come
things.
home, it's a
If
big
someone's
deal.
calling, yeah, it's two things. If you're leaving church, somebody's calling you at church to say leave church, you know that it's not something small. But then again, two, you want to know why, right? Like, why am I coming home? And then we find out that, she had been killed in a car accident the night before. And so we leave, we go home, I go to my mom's, and then, I just go and my aunt greets me. And she's like, it's CJ. That was her nickname. She's like, it's CJ. And I knew it. I just felt it in my heart. I knew what it was, because I can tell you the night before, I was sitting on the couch, and, I was at my mom's sitting on the couch, and I was like, make sure you guys are cared for. So it was her and her best friend, and they had been childhood friends since kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So they were going out to celebrate her birthday, her best friend's birthday. And she was turning, I think at the time she was like 18, maybe 18 or 19.
So were you I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you the oldest sister? You were the older sister?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And so this was your little sister you were talking to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is my baby. So I'm telling her, of course, I put on that mom role. Please be careful. Make sure you call, wear your seatbelt. You're just going through the list, of things, yes. Because I know they're going out to celebrate her friend's birthday. So they want to have a good time, but I want them to be mindful of safety as well. So, we had that conversation. I was like, just be careful. Call us when you get back. So that was the night prior. And then the next morning, we're at church, and then we get this message. So we rush to my mom's house, and we just hear the news. And again, like I said, as soon as I walked through the door, I knew what time it was. And then from there, I just wanted the details. And I just wanted to console my mom, because she had lost her youngest. And that moment, that was the first time we've ever experienced that so close, for a relative to pass away. Sure. And not only that, it was her and her best friend. So it was kind of like two families hurting at the same time. And to learn that, she was immediately killed on impact. And her friend survived maybe a couple weeks, about a month after that, but she was just on a ventilator the whole time, so she was pretty much brain dead, but they wanted to hold on to what they had as long as possible. And so just to experience this is like, it's an eye-opening experience, because now you have this person who you have grown to love, who you're fussing with, who you're fighting with, who you're, being that mom. At least me, I was being the mom always, and I think it was like, oh my gosh, here she comes telling me something else again. But it's just like, for me, it was just the encouragement and just wanting to have the best for her and make sure that she made the right decisions, because she was a very intelligent young woman. She had a very good head on her shoulders, very smart. So for me, I wanted to continue to nurture that as a sister, just to kind of let her know that, hey, you don't have to do these kind of things. And if you do, here are some possible consequences that may happen. But if you go on the right path and make sure that you do the right things and just kind of set goals for yourself, you'll see how far along in life you'll get and how advanced you'll be. And then, hopefully you'll do the things that you really, really enjoy doing that'll make you happy. So it was just taking on that mom role, and then just all of a sudden for it to be gone, and just to miss that nurture part was kind of yeah, I think I dealt with it in the way that I knew best, because it's no handbook for how to deal with death. You know, it's like you deal
Yes.
with it how you deal with it. And at that moment, you know, we were able to just have that peace that remained behind, that we were able to love and cherish, and continue to nurture in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so sorry for the loss of your sister. And when you have that natural maternal instinct, like you said, like you played the role of the mother, it's a really deep loss. It is like when you say, well, my mother lost her baby, but in some way you were also like, you know, it sounds like you were a fantastic and I'm sure, like you said, you guys used to fuss and fight and stuff like that, but still, it sounds like you were probably an amazing older sister. And one of the things I remember you saying, and you could always have the opportunity to say that you don't or can't talk about this part of the story, but when you said that she was she killed by a drunk driver? Were they hit? Is that what happened? Was somebody else driving? Like, I don't know, like, if you're able to talk about that.
Yeah, I can. So they were on the expressway, and they were headed back home. So they were headed back home, and well, at the time, from what we learned, is that the officer didn't test for drunk driving. So they didn't test the driver and for any, you know, alcohol or maybe under the influence or anything. So that part still remains unknown. But they were hit from behind, and when they were hit, their car did a 360 in the road. So now they're on the expressway, and the car is facing in the opposite direction of where it's
Oh,
supposed to be facing, and the car that hit them kind of head on. And from what we hear, there were witnesses that pulled over, and this one guy who you know, we call him just the angel, because he got out of his car and he was trying to pull them from the car before the car kind of burst in flames, because the car did catch on fire. So he was there just trying to put it out and just trying to get both of the girls out, but they couldn't because of the seatbelts. So, you know, just to hear that part, or to just think about, you know, what could have happened, or like, you know, we go in our heads and we say, why did you have to leave, or why couldn't you have partied at the home? It's kind of like hindsight, right? And that's what I think I did for me for a long while, because
yes.
I felt that that night before she left, I could have said, hey guys, you know, let's celebrate here, you know, or let's stay here, or maybe celebrate tomorrow, go to lunch or do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't happen. But then I think about all things happen for a reason. And of course, I don't have those answers as of right now. And I would like to know those, and not saying that I would ever get the answer, but I just think positive about the reasons why she was here for that short period of time,
Yes.
and the impact that she had not only on my life, but I have a twin sister as well. So her life and
Oh.
her family members. So I just think about that, and just think about the great times that we were able to spend and share together while she was here on this side. Yeah.
Yeah, it is such a powerful story. And I just think about, I totally, like, you know, my mother, I think I mentioned to you, my mother died when I was 12. She was murdered. And, you know, when these kinds of tragic, you know, accidents, or, you know, events and things that happen, there's always that moment when the mind is trying to make sense
Mm-hmm.
of the senseless, right? It's like in all the different ways, like you said, there's no handbook on grief. There's no handbook on like somebody you love dying. And it's like, and although there are a ton of books on grief, but it's like, you know, when somebody you love goes, and especially when it's unexpected, and especially when it's such a young loss, like your sister was like 18, 19, my mom was 33, like young people,
Mm-hmm.
it's so impactful. And it leaves, I always say, so you know, in New England we'd say, well, that's going to leave a mark, you know, and it leaves a mark in its own way. And but what you're talking about though is, and you know, especially in the work that I do as a spiritual mentor, it's the meaning that we make of things, right? Do we want to look at this thing as something, like you said, that has happened to me in a tragic and awful way? But it's like, what am I going to do with this thing? Like, I didn't ask for it and I didn't want it, but now it's mine and I have it. So like, how are we going to do it? And like you said, focusing on the positives and focusing on the meaning and the purpose of her life. And so just thank you for sharing that, because I do think that these things shape us and influence us and often inspire us. And I know that there are, you know, of other stories that you have. And again, I'm not sure which ones, you know, what you feel comfortable talking about, but I know that, you know, you also have, you have three kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of your sons had a cancer journey. Do you feel comfortable sharing that as well?
Yes, that was, oh gosh. So that was a moment in time for me that I experienced. Again, never had anybody in the family close to us who had experienced cancer. And on the day that I learned about his cancer, we were in court. We were sitting in court, listening to the arrangement of the lady who killed my sister. So we're sitting in court, and of course, no cell phones, no movement, no anything. You're sitting there, and if you whisper, you could get kicked out of the courtroom. So one of the sheriffs in the back passed a note up. We're sitting there. One of the sheriffs in the back passed a note up and said, you know, could you guys come step outside? So this time we were able to be excused outside of the courtroom to go outside to take this call. So the night prior, our kids, we had them at our cousin's house. So we said, you know, could they stay here the night, because early in the morning we have to be in court. And so they're there, and you know, they're playing around. They're little boys, no shirts on, you know, just being little kids. And my husband's cousin, she's a 14-year trauma nurse. She noticed that how the right side of my middle son's stomach was kind of like hard, and she's like, hold on, you know, something doesn't feel right. And so she was like, hey, she was calling actually my husband, who stepped out of the courtroom with us as well, calling him to say, hey, I think you guys need to come and take Noah to the ER right away. So he proceeded to go to take Noah to the ER. I remained there in the courtroom just to hear, you know, the arrangement. And so once he got there, and by the time we finished, I was able to take the call. We were in the car, and he's like, you know, we're at the ER. Now we're leaving the ER, going to the children's hospital, because they did a scan on Noah's stomach and he has a mass. As of right now, they can't tell what kind of mass. They just know it's a mass. By the time we got to the children's hospital, they were admitting my son, who was 2 at the time. They were admitting him and saying that they needed to get surgery done right away. So he was at a stage 3, and he had a Wilms tumor. A Wilms tumor is a rare form of cancer that maybe 1 in 200,000 kids get. And he happened to be that one of the 200,000. So they had to operate right away. We were admitted on the 13th of January, and he was having surgery on the 15th. So they had to treat it as a stage 4. And, you know, of course, all of this stuff is so foreign. All of this stuff is new. Like, I don't know what you're saying. You're speaking Greek or a foreign language to a mom who is pregnant. I'm pregnant with my youngest. And at the time I'm going through hyperemesis, and hyperemesis is the worst form of morning sickness that anyone can ever have. And so I'm experiencing this sickness. And then just to hear about be in court, learning about this arrangement of my sister, and then now learning that my son has the possibility of cancer. They hadn't diagnosed it as cancer yet, right? So I'm just like, at this, I think I'm just moving. At this moment, I just think I'm moving. I'm not even thinking, nothing's registering. I'm not like, it's not soaking in as to what's really going on in my reality, in my world right now. So they operate on the 15th. And now, you know, surgery went well, and to see your son go behind those doors and they sedate him. And as a mom who can't go past like the visitor's room because I am pregnant, that was really hard on top. Just you don't know you know, you don't know if you're going to see your son for the last time, but I always believe and know that, you know, that God is good and he's going to bring my son
Mm-hmm.
out for him to be even more of a superstar than he was then when he went in. So
Yes.
he comes out of, you know, he comes out of surgery. He goes into the room on day 2. He's connected to all of these tubes. I
Oh.
mean, you have like cords everywhere.
And he's this little body.
He's
It's like this
little.
little body.
Oh my gosh, he's little. Do you know he stood up in the bed? He stood up in the bed and he says, "I'm Superman." And of course, he was in the motion of he was about to jump out of the bed, and we're like, "No, no!" But we was just like, "You just came out of surgery, like a major surgery, to have your right kidney removed, and on day 2, you're standing in the bed saying you're Superman." And so that moment, I always remember it. And we have a picture of it, of him standing in that bed. From there, I knew that everything would be okay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I looked at that moment to know that, you know, we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through these every week of chemo. We're gonna go through radiation as well. So he had chemo and radiation at the same time. And, you know, of course, I'm like, why does it have to be long? Because 6 months, 8 months seems like an infinity for a child to
Sure.
be, you know, going through radiation and chemo. But when I knew that moment of him standing in that bed, I knew it kind of gave me the comfort and the security I needed. Like, it's going to be okay. So we go through that long process of chemo radiation, and he comes out well to where, you know, they move it to every other month, and then they move it to every 3 months, and then every 6 months, and so on and so forth. So now we're at once a year to where we just have to get blood work and urine tested. And on the 21st, which was a couple of days ago, he celebrated 10 years cancer free.
So he's 12
So
now.
that is just like, I'm sorry.
He's 12
Yes,
now. That's
he's
amazing.
13. 13. Yeah,
13.
so we're just so excited about that, and he's excited about it. And now we can tell him about the story because, you know, he wondered why he has scars on his stomach and things like that. So just to talk about it now is just, you know, now we're able to share that with him so he knows that you have to be grateful for things in life, that
Mm-hmm.
things happen to people to build them and their character, and then to put out their strength, and you learn how strong you are. You know, as a 2-year-old, you're very strong, and now you get to live that out. So it was just one of those experiences that, again, added another layer of, you know, another cape to my back for me to know that.
But that, yeah, I mean, but that speaks totally to that first line where it says, you know, you're a creative strategist. I think, you know, professionally you do that, but I think you're a creative strategist in your life as well, in your personal life, you know? And I think that when it says you live by your own rules and you make things happen, and it's like, again and again, the reason why I want, first of all, I want the listeners to know who we're talking to, right? Like to get a sense and a feel for the woman that you are, the being
Yeah.
that you are, and the spiritual being that you are, and
Mhm.
how your faith has played a role. And it's not like, oh, like things were just handed to you. Like you have come through some things,
Yeah.
right? And of course you have your essence as one of God's kids. Like you came through with your own kind of what I call divine alignment or divine assignment, right? Your own
Mhm.
individual curriculum of how you're going to show up in the world. But
Mhm.
then you have been tested. You have overcome, like you have done these things. And I think it's part of what, you don't become an award-winning business owner. You don't become like a kid at 20 who like owns her own house. Like you don't become a person who, first of all, I know it's off center, but you got to tell me about how you came to design a postage stamp, because I'm fascinated and I love stamps. I don't collect stamps, but I love the artwork on stamps. You know what I mean? There's so many layers here. And of course, I also want them to understand all of this about your family and how important family is to you, because I think that also informs the no to patterns thing, like the heartbeat of why you started that, which we'll get to in a sec. But can you just indulge my curiosity? Like, how does one become a postage stamp designer? Like, what happened?
You know, I say, you know, I kind of think the move of me coming to New Hampshire, because I feel like that was the separation part of me actually growing into the person and the woman and who I am and who I will continue to become. Because had I not moved here, I think I would still remain in my comfort zone, and these opportunities that presented themselves would not be present, or they would be, but I would have to work like 10 times as harder to kind of uncover those. Because you got to think, like, when you're in Atlanta or if you're in Georgia, it's one of those meccas. Now it's considered the Hollywood. So now you have to be that much more creative and work that much more harder to say, hey, it's me over here, you know. So just coming to New Hampshire, I had started to research about what organizations I can join, what kind of groups I can be in, what is there to do. Although I wasn't coming up with a lot of things, because of course, you know, that is not where the support for Black, you know, African Americans and people of color, that's not here in New Hampshire.
No.
It was like another shock.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. I mean, I remember when, like, we talked about this a little bit. It's so funny because right now that event that I did with my friends from Wheelock College is like coming up, because it was this time 6 years ago, whatever. And I remember being at that event and them saying, because I always joke, like, you know, I went from Lawrence, Mass, which was a cultural mill town where it was like an immigration city, you know. I mean, we had all flavors, colors, whatever, sounds, smells from the different foods, you know. And then I moved from there to Boston. I go to BU, which is a huge international college, university. And then I moved to LA, where it's like every shape, again, color, form. And then I came to New Hampshire. And I was shocked. Like, I just remember being like, wait, what? And so my friends said to me, because, you know, they were race and media teachers at professors, Dan Owusu and Susan Owusu, Susan X. Jane, which is her current name. And they said, yeah, New Hampshire is the second whitest state in America, with Maine being first. And I was like, holy shit, this explains so much. And I'm a white person, so I think as a person of color coming to New Hampshire, it's got to be, I don't want to derail the stamp story, but that's got to be a little bit shocking, and we can dive into that. But yeah, so God. These opportunities, like, you're like, I had to kind of go, like, you're looking for them, right? Stuff is happening.
I'm looking for things to do. So through my Google research, I found an organization called the Seacoast African American Cultural Center. And I was like, oh, African American, yes. You know, like, yes, here we go. So, I just did a little bit more research about this nonprofit organization, which is a wonderful organization based out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And they have, right now, they have the exhibit of the Obama exhibit, where his photographer, Pete I can't pronounce his name, he's there, and they have those on display. So they were excited about that. But to rewind, when I first joined the organization, I came as a volunteer, just started volunteering just to see if I would like, to commit time to the organization. And then I became a board member. And so just building those relationships and talking to those folk, that were there, and just trying to see what else is going on here in Portsmouth, what else is going on. And then one of the ladies on the board, she's like, hey, we have this coming up, where it was right at the time they were opening, doing the launch and the grand premiere opening of the African Burying Ground. And she said that we're partnering with them, and we have this contest that's coming up, and I think you should enter it. And I was like, what are the details, and what was it? And then she was like, it's a stamp. You can design a stamp, and the person who wins, they get to, have their stamp recognized nationally and locally. When she said nationally, I was like, yep, I'm in. So
I love your spot. I love your spirit, man. You're like, local, whatever. National, I'm in.
Nationally, yeah, sure. Nationally, United States Postal Service, yep, I'm in. So what I did, I just kind of went to the African Burying Ground, just wanted to hear more about it, because this was new to me. I think this happened like in 16, maybe 18, which hadn't been too long for me to be here to know about what was going on and the history of why they was making this just great landmark in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So I learned about it. And from there, I was able to come up with a design where I felt that it was just so powerful, and it spoke to a lot of what was going on, where the stamp, it had, so I kind of created the ground, and I had drums sitting on the ground. And I said these drums are kind of like the connection to the ancestors that are below the ground. And this is how they're making music. And the sounds that are coming out are just like music to our ears, and it's their spirit. And it's like we can hear them, and this is how we can connect. And it was like a simple stamp, but it was very powerful. And what I said, and what I wanted it to just be like speaking. I wanted it to be their voices of what I saw, because of, they're there under the African burying ground. It's bodies. It was families. It's so rich in history right there. And sometimes I think the only way for all of us to communicate and come together is through the sound of music. And everyone can relate to music. So that was the stamp design that won it recognition nationally and locally. And it was just wonderful just to have that experience. And I just say, I hadn't been here 5 years, and now I'm winning recognition in this kind of area. What else can I do? What else? What's the next challenge? And I said, here I am, although I am a stranger to this state, to this city, to this community, I'm making things happen without being known. So I'm just like, well, if people know me, just imagine
what I can do.
What I can do, right? So that was just something very powerful too for me, because again, like I said, had I been back in Georgia, I don't think I would, one, have had that opportunity, but two, not be able to step outside of my comfort zone and to put myself out there and to do something like this, because I knew, now it's like now or never. Like now you have to take these opportunities, and what's the worst can happen? You can fail, right? You fail, but you get back up and learn from your failure, and you just keep going. And that's how I continue to look at life and just move one day at a time.
It's so amazing. And my sweetie, my husband, Chris, is a professional musician. So we totally agree that music he's played all over the world in countries where nobody speaks English, but they get it, right? Because there's something that music, the spirit of music, it is a connector. It is I think, a love maker and a peacemaker, right? I think there's so much to it. So I just love the imagery of those drums on the ground. And as a person who uses my voice, and as a writer who has a voice, and obviously I have a podcast, so I have a big mouth and I use it, but I love so often, like, being one of the things my mother taught me in the short time that we had her, I was only with her for 12 years, but she always taught us that we have to speak up for the voiceless. You got to use your voice for the voiceless. And whether it's for me, and whether it's for, animals, it's one of the reasons why I'm vegan. However, she was a spokesperson for children, abused children. Like, we have to be the voices sometimes for those, for whatever reason. They do not have the ability to have a say, or they need somebody, whenever there's an imbalance of power, whenever there's an injustice, those of us who should, right? I don't have a lot of shoulds. Like, I try not to be like, don't should on yourself, right? Yeah. But there's certain areas when it comes to justice, when it comes to what's right and righteous, it's like, you've got to do it. And I think it's the power and the beauty. Like, that's a fantastic segue, to kind of talk about know to patterns, because which is your current thing. And I'm a proud member. I became a member because I believe in the work so much. But if you can talk about how, I know the story, but like, how did it come to be this new project? And of course, those of you who are listening, keep in mind, Daniel is a creative strategist. I know that you do work in different businesses and stuff like that, and we can tell people how to reach you and find you. But this work right here is what really caught my attention. So tell us a little bit about Know to Patterns and how it came to be.
Sure. So know the patterns, the name came to me maybe like a year ago. I think I was in the shower or something. And as creatives, I think, you get your ideas where you get your ideas, right? So it can be in the shower, while you're in the restroom, in the car. So this name popped in my head, no to patterns. I was like, I like that. But I didn't know how I would connect no to patterns to whatever project or whatever other idea I would have coming up, that later on down the road. So, in the wake of, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, I started thinking, I was like, I've always had this idea, another idea in my head, to where when I moved to New Hampshire, it was no resources. Again, it was like you touch on Google, and if Google can't find it, you're in trouble, right? So I'm just like, maybe I need to reword it. African Americans in Portsmouth community, African Americans in New Hampshire, Black business owners in New Hampshire, business owners in New England. I mean, I think I did every keyword phrase to try to pull up any type of groups, involvements, community here. And I was just coming up with nothing, right? So I said, just to have some type of resource for someone who may be, African American or person of color who is considering to move to New Hampshire, if I can create this resource that they know that they have allies here, being the whitest state, second whitest state in America, and then if they have this, they may feel comfort, they may feel community. They may feel, okay, maybe I can work with being in New Hampshire, despite what they've heard. Because once I came here, I went through a level of depression. I was in hibernation mode. I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to be involved. I didn't want to do anything because I didn't feel like this was home for me. This wasn't a place that I could just go out and see someone who looks like me without being stared at like, do you belong here? And people.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's important, because the way that we connect hat to hat is by, I think, sometimes giving like specific examples. And I remember one of the things that you said to me is that, you would be out in public, like with your children. And so there's a couple of things. So, and you can touch on the ones that you feel like, but definitely the people looking at you, and you're like, it's one thing if they look once, but when they turn around and turn around and turn around, turn around. And then also little comments that like white people, would like make to you, right? Like about how, and again, you have all the details, so you'll probably tell it better than me, but like looking at you and just kind of offhandedly commenting how your children were so well behaved. And it's like, so what's that about, right? Like stuff like that.
And just to get those conversations and those comments, I just said, I'm just making a regular run to Walmart, just like you are. I don't want to be, speaking and saying hello, how you doing is one thing, but to always get this, and the first time it was like, okay, the first time is okay, right? The second and third time, every other time you take your kid out, it's kind of like, hold on, wait, what is it? Like, am I missing something? Is this just, what's the expectation? What's the perception that someone may have about Black families, Black children in the grocery stores or out in public? I mean, do you expect them to be doing cartwheels off of the shopping carts, me running down the aisle with them? I don't know what the perception is, but yes, my children will listen and they are well behaved. Yes, I agree with you on that, and you don't have to tell me that, but what was your perception? Like, why did you feel the need to have to tell me?
Exactly.
So that was one thing as well too, just one of the many things that I thought back to as I created and just felt the need to kind of put this community together. Know the patterns is just those experiences when I go outside of my home. Like, I don't want to be approached in that manner. So I said, if someone, or even if they're researching hey, what is New Hampshire all about? And being the first community like this on the Seacoast, I think it's a great tool to be able to have on the websites where people can feel more comfortable and feel welcome to come to New Hampshire. So for me, it's a community where we have these hard conversations about race. We can talk about diversity and inclusion. We can talk about, perceptions and why you feel that way. And we're adults. We're just having the conversation because I feel like it's the start. It's the start to why you may have learned things this way, and another reason why you may hate a race. That it's a race, it's not like, we had control of that. No, I don't have control of how I'm born or the race that I'm born, but we can get a better understanding by talking it out. And why do you feel that way? So it's kind of like unlearning those biases and those things that we've been taught throughout the years, and really understanding, if you choose to, let me put that, if you choose to understand, and if you choose to be open-minded about how you can bring more diversity into the state, and then work with the diversity and inclusion that's here in your state. Because I said, if when I did the numbers, I was like, it's 2% of less for Black African Americans here in the state of New Hampshire. If there's 2% here in this state, why not nurture that 2%? Then if you nurture that 2%, then that's the attracting factor for those people who may consider moving here, because you've nurtured the people that are already here. But if you don't find those resources and help for those people who are already here, of course, bad news travel fast. Right. And that's what's going to be out there. It's like, no, don't move here because of X, Y, and Z. And you don't want your state to be known as that. So I felt like that was another key factor too, when it came to business owners and just being able to connect to a community of networks, and for us to kind of like be one. Know the patterns. It's just like this. It's a very much needed community. And for me as a business owner, again, I was just like, where is everyone at? We're spread. Where is everybody? Like, where is this 2%? Like, what is it supposed to be? 0.2? Is it supposed to be less than 2? I mean, it's supposed to be 0.1. Where is it? Like, where are these people of color that, I'm doing my research on? Where are they? So we all spread out. But I feel like although we can be spread out, but if we have this one connecting factor of a community, we can bring those together. And just imagine the things that we can do for those people who support us in our community. And then too, it also feels good to be supported. That's another thing.
Sure.
When we come to a brand new state, and being, of course, the obvious, and if you don't feel supported, you're not going to stay long. If you don't feel supported, you're not going to be here. And it's always going to be a bad or a not so good experience. And you want to just feel that support. And for me, honestly, I just feel like it's taken a while to get there. It's taken a while for me to feel like I'm supported in my community. I don't know if it's because now I'm putting myself out there more, and without any expectations. I just put myself out there, and whatever happens, because I feel like if I put myself out there with expectations, and if it doesn't meet my expectations, I'm then disappointed. But if I go out there, don't have any expectations, and just put myself out there 100% each and every time, then I'll begin to attract those people who want to be in my community, who want to provide me support, who want to be there. And those are the kind of people that I want. I want it to be organic. So it's just to sum it up, I just felt like it was a need for Know the Patterns. I felt like it's a need to have these conversations, hard conversations about race, and how to raise anti-racist kids, and how, my kid can play with your kid, and know that, yes, the color of our skins may be different, but guess what? We're human beings. We're on this planet to live just like you're wanting to live, and in a peaceful way. Of course, we're not going to always agree on things. We're not going to always have the same opinion about things, which is the unique thing about what makes us different. Because you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Right. We can agree to disagree, but is that going to make me love you any less? Is that going to make me look at you as less of a human being because you have an opinion, which is your total right to have that? And I think sometimes too, we kind of take that as personal. We take someone's opinion as personal opinions. So now if I have an interaction with someone of a different race, it may be, oh, now I can label everyone like this person, or I label everyone like that person because of a disagreement. No, we have to remove that. It's just a human being. We're two adults having a conversation. You don't like the pink shoes. I don't like the green shoes. And guess what? We can agree on that. We don't like it. You like what you like. That's going to make you happy. I like what I like. That makes me happy. But we have an understanding. And I think that's where a lot of the hardness, and I say hardness meaning hard to initiate the conversations because you feel like you might offend somebody. But you want to know the answers, but you don't want to ask the questions. So I think in this community too, I'm helping to nurture that. Like, hey, let's talk. What's on your mind? Like, you're not going to offend me. If I have the answer, I'll give you the answer. If I don't, I'll just say I don't. But let's find a way to try to find the answer so you can have a better understanding. So
yeah, there's so much that you said there, and I think one of the things you touched upon about if you choose to, right? I think there's a level of willful ignorance, right? I think there's a lot of stuff. I think there's fear. I think there's willful ignorance. I think there's like so many layers that go into relationships between, especially in. I have people who are like, when I grew up, there were it was not my experience, but I know people who were like, especially kids who grew up in New Hampshire, they were like, I didn't have any Black friends. I didn't know any Black families. I didn't know what it is. And so now there can be like this fear of like being clumsy, or like you said, saying the wrong thing, or saying, well, I didn't know. And it's like that, I didn't know any better. It's like, well, the power of having something like what you're creating in the state, and especially, in New Hampshire, is that there are resources now. There are things popping up now. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, so people would learn about it and know about it, so that we can come together, especially, as a spiritual mentor. So much of this work is the undoing. Like, everybody thinks it's like, oh, it's about becoming good or becoming. And I'm like, no. Your natural inheritance, who you already are as one of God's kids, is you are goodness and you are love. But we have all these ego conditioned things that were passed down from our parents and generationally, right? And just like things that were like, that we never stopped to question. And so much of this work is the undoing of those things that we believe separate us. And, we can disagree, and still love each other, but we've got to be willing to be fucking uncomfortable, right? We've got to be willing to say like, I'm going to ask this question and it might sound I don't like whatever, but so many people are afraid, I think, especially, right? So like racism never really went anywhere. Like, this is the thing that's so fascinating to me right now, is like, but it's being like big spotlight, right? Whether it's Black Lives Matter or, the killing of Black men and women from police, and like all the stuff that's really coming to a head right now. I'm like, guys, always been here. It's like now we're like really paying attention. But I think that there's like, when all of this started happening, and remember when like Instagram, like everybody was doing like the black squares, and a lot of people were like being called out, and it's like, it's not enough to do a black square. You've got to do this, and you've got to do this, and are you doing this, and are you doing this? And I just know from people, because people seek me for answers or support or counsel or whatever. They would be like, well, KK, what do you think about this or whatever? And a lot of people, I remember, were coming to me saying, I want to talk about it, but there was a fear of being like attacked or being called racist or whatever. And I'm like, and I was trying to explain to some folks, and and look, anything that I'm doing, I'm teaching myself too. It's not like I've got it all figured out. All right. But what I was saying is like, part of this is we have to be willing to be wicked uncomfortable. In fact, I did a whole podcast episode on that with my friend Susan X. Jane. And I said, race, it was a conversation on race and the willingness to be uncomfortable, and to just say like, hey, I want to have a greater understanding. And so like our desire for communion and community and connection and love has to be greater than our worry or fear, right? Like, oh, and I think you're providing a membership or a community or a group where these conversations are wicked important. because the ego conditioned mind, like the society that we live in. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So these people who are like seeking counsel and they're like, I'm afraid to be called a racist or whatever. I'm like, look, you've got to understand the systems that we exist in, they are racist. So we're all a little racist, whether we see ourselves that way or not. We've been culturally conditioned, and we do have built-in biases. We all do have built-in prejudices, and whether it's about another group of color or LGBTQIA community or men against women or this about that, we're always going through this lens of duality. We're always seeing separation. And one of the powerful things about what you're creating is an opportunity for people. First of all, why I love it is it's kind of like people are now going to be shit out of excuses. It's like there is now a place, if you are willing to have these conversations, where you are welcome. And it's always like when Gandhi used to say, right, you have to be the change you wish to see in the world. You wanted you and your family and families like yours to be having a different experience. So you went first and you pioneered. Because I remember you saying that part of No to Patterns happened because other people were reaching out to you because you were here and they were asking you, so what's it like? And it's kind of like you said something like 30 minutes ago that just really struck me, is when you said, like, what they say about your state, what they've heard. And I just think like, yeah, like shit, you know, what are they hearing about New Hampshire? And I actually am not like my friends. I'm kind of not a New Hampshire loyalist. Like I live here, but I've never really claimed it as like, this is like my home, because there's so much of it that's still kind of foreign to me as a city kid or a kid that like moved here. And I'm like, what's happening? There's certain levels of, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm not grateful and I don't appreciate where I live, but there's still some stuff that's missing, and you're touching on part of that, right? So I think the other thing that's interesting is it's not just about, because I want to make sure that like, I'm just very direct, that the white people listening understand this. It's not, No to Patterns is not just for African-American Black people, right? It's for us to all come together because you have different themes each month. And I think this past month, the theme was education and teaches, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about how it's kind of set up and what people can expect from it? Although I believe what you said, I want to touch on that too, because I think that expectations piece is really big. And I always say expectations are premeditated resentments. But when you're joining a group, we do kind of want to know, like, this is like what happens each month and this is what it's offering. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, sure. So each month we're going to have, it's going to be a variety. So I change it up just so, because everyone learns differently. So I know some people can digest an interview better than someone can digest maybe just having to go and read something, you know. So I wanted to provide different ways of getting these resources out to people who are interested and willing to learn. So this month, September kicked it off with classes in session, and it was dedicated to back to school. And I had interviews from a teacher. I had a feature from a teacher, and I have at the end of the month, I have a couple things coming up, which is a list of Black authors for those teachers who are looking to have literature included in their classroom to be more inclusive. And we have a feature from a 9-year-old entrepreneur right here in our community. So each month is theme-based, and I want to make sure that I'm touching on things that are going on right now and feel that's beneficial for what we're living, our reality. The next few months are lined up with interviews from parents who are raising interracial kids in the Seacoast and how that has affected them, and just learning more about their household dynamic. Because if you have a white mom and a Black dad, or a Black dad and a white mom, it's totally different than just having a full Black family. And just putting those stories out there to kind of help understand like the challenges on which we experience each and every day, just to try to, you know, get your kid out of the house and want them to go to school and to just be able to operate as a functioning adult in a world that may not accept them or may look at them differently. So we have these conversations, we have these questionnaires. I have expert leaders that come in and we just talk. And each week, a new piece of material is released, and it's not in your face. It's not like, 5,000 emails in your inbox. It's little small actionable steps that I feel that's not much that you can digest, and it gives you those thinking moments. Like, you can digest it and you're able to think about what you just read, or you can digest it, and if you have that question, ask it. So I just didn't, for me, I know I don't learn well when a lot of things are thrown on my plate, and I'm a visual learner. So it's just a mix of both worlds, the visual, the audio, and the reading, and just wanting to make sure I include everyone in that. And again, it's not just for African American people of color, it's for white people as well, white folk as well, who want to listen, who want to learn, who want to know, who want to show that support. And again, for those people who are looking to move here, they now know that there's a group of allies right here in this community who are doing the work, where you can feel like, I just think about, like, if I had this, if I did my Google search on the handy dandy Google and it came up with a group of resources that I knew already had allies, or somebody had already did the work to build this community, I may have felt that much better and a little bit more comfortable knowing that in this all white state, there is people who support me, and people and families who look like me. So I think that is just key. And the things that's going on in the community is just to be able to provide this great resource that you can digest at your leisure. The content is there, and it's just awesome to be able to bring the community together through this online resource.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. And I even love the name No to Patterns. To me, it's breaking up. It's like all the systems, like, I'm like, hello, America, pay attention, because it's all going. Like, it clearly is not working. It's not working. Yeah. So like the new way. And I think it is going to be like, I think so many of the great movements were done by spiritualists, right? They were done by people of, and however you just use the word faith, I think it was people who do stop and pay attention, and who do think deeply, and who do recognize there's a problem before most of the rest of the world catches on. And it's like, hey, we got to change some things. And it is about justice, and it is about fairness, and it is about doing the right thing. And I think it is, it's such an important opportunity if people want to play a role and be a part of it. And I think what you're saying is like, it is a built-in, it's like built into the DNA, right? The cellular body of people is, we do want to feel welcomed, and we do want to feel seen, and like we matter, and that like we're included. And one of the things that you said when you said, if you have a question, just ask. So one of the things I was curious about as a member that I don't know the answer to, where does somebody ask those kind of questions? Are there forums, or are there like Zoom calls or a Q&A set? Like where within No to Patterns can those questions be asked and those conversations happen?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a private Facebook group where most of the interaction is. And I thought that just connecting people through the Facebook group, you can kind of see those members that are in the community, the online community, and those, you may want to introduce yourself with. They could be your neighbors. And they're not just Seacoast based. I mean, we have some that are as far as, I think, Pelham, New Hampshire. So, I mean, it's all over New Hampshire for the state of New Hampshire. And I thought the best way to bring the faces to the names and to connect in a much better way would be the Facebook group. So you can. And I also too, when I send out emails, if you have a question about this email, hit reply and let me know. So, and I jump into the Facebook group, just to kind of check in to see how people are doing. And again, I don't want it to be overbearing. I don't want it to be overwhelming, because once you get that feeling of overwhelm, you push back. You're like, no, okay, I don't need anything else on my plate. I just want to be able to drip it to you. to know that each week you can log in and view this content. And I don't care how far in advance or how old the content may be, if there's a question about it, if there's something that you want to talk about, shoot me an email. I'm open to it. And if you feel like this is something that, you know, or if I feel like this is important for us to discuss in the Facebook group, we do that as well. So it is a way for you to connect outside of the online membership.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so happy that, like I said, it all started with somebody making a comment in some other Facebook group, and your name came up, and I'm in like wicked curious. So I'm like, who is it? Like as you said, the power of Google. I'm like,
Yeah.
who is this
Yeah.
person? And I was like, hey. Wait, what? And then so like it became this thing, and it was just like a little, I always say like the divine is always leaving us spiritual breadcrumbs. And so I'm always like following and picking it up. When my spiritual team drops somebody into my life repeatedly, I always know there's a reason why, right? And so I'm just so thrilled that your family is here, that you're here, that you've answered the call and you're taking the initiative. I think it's a powerful resource for our state. And I know that you have the backing of a couple of fantastic sponsors already, right? I think you said Seacoast Rep, and who else is a part of it?
Yeah, sure. The Seacoast Rep and WSCA, Portsmouth Community Radio, where I also have a show on Thursday nights that I play R&B and neo soul from 8 to 10 p.m. And since COVID, I haven't been back in the studio. So what I've been doing is just curating playlists, and I'll post those on Facebook. But I'm setting up a date. I think I want to go back soon, once I kind of get the remote learning under, I don't know if that's ever going to be on a schedule.
Yes. You and like thousands of other parents right now trying to get a grip and figure out like, wait, what?
Yeah. You know, but that's another thing, another challenge. And, you know, I'm here to accept it. But I think another piece to me is that music part. I grew up, my great grandmother, she had a cafe, and every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, that's where we were babysat in the middle of the cafe, like in the floor of the cafe. And we would hear music from like Al Green and Eddie Pendergrass and Patti LaBelle. And I mean, we're 3, 4, you know, we're young. And so that is where my love for music has come from. And it's also connected to the memories of my grandmother's cafe on a Friday and Saturday night, and just being there. And I know, again, she was probably breaking every child labor law for having kids in the cafe. But I mean, I think that's a part of the story, and that's a great part of it. And then you ask, like, how do you create the love for this? Like, why do you love to draw? Why do you love to paint? So for me, that was my connection. It's just being in that cafe and just the love for music and old school stories that the artists share, and I just love it, just love it.
100%. And I was telling you when the first time we ever talked, I said, yeah, my parents had great taste in music. So same thing. I grew up listening to the same kind of music, and so I hear a certain song and it takes me right back to a time of my parents, like, you know, dancing in the living room, and us, like, you know, sitting on the couch and learning how to hustle and how to, you know, like do all these different things. And it just like, it takes me right back to those moments. And it's no surprise that, you know, my mother also, you know, shared with me a love of books. And I've said, you know, we didn't always have, you know, enough food in the house, but we always had books, and like loving books and reading. And of course I married a musician because it's like, you know, just that love of creativity and stuff like that. So it all points back, right? It all points back. And I think, again, it speaks to why the work that you're doing and the membership you're creating is so important, because if you come from a state where, hey, Whitey McWhitey, right? Like you only know what you know. And you got to be willing to say, like, there's a lot I don't know. And there's a possibility that I could be wrong. And it's not about making people wrong, but it's about understanding that there's a whole other spectrum out there. There's a whole other world of possibility out there. And to me, why my show, first of all, I am a storyteller, but why I asked you to share those personal stories is because that's how we connect to our basic humanness of the thing that we all like, there's no way you're listening to the story of your sister and you don't feel that. Like, even now I'm getting emotional thinking about it again, like you talking to her the night before, and it's like our humanity and our divinity, we think it's so separate, but it's not, and so I just think this is an opportunity for us to know each other better, to come to understand each other better, to come to love each other, because that's the only way we get through this is together.
Absolutely. And I say, you know what? I not think about it often, but some days it does sneak in my head. And I was like, we're all going to leave this earth one day. So while we're here, why should you fight with someone? Why should you be angry with someone? Why should you hate somebody you don't even know? They may not even know that you feel a certain way about them. And not, many people don't care. But I'm just saying, like, overall, like, you're holding on to something that someone else is not affected by, or vice versa, or they may be affected by, but then it's just taking that next step to get an understanding as to why you feel this way. Why do you feel this way? Where does it come from? It takes more emotion. It takes more energy for you to hate someone than to just say, I love you, or I'm sorry, or let's work together, or let's work this out. So I'm always trying to, I've never said that I'm a cheerleader, but everyone who's around me said that I am a cheerleader.
Yes.
But you just want to always think about the positive and do the positive things, because the negative puts you in a bad place. So while you're here, make the best of the days and moments you have. And I think that's another thing that I learned from the death of my sister, not knowing that she would be taken away so soon at such a young age. But what impact are you going to make? Because you never know when your time is up. So why be on the earth fussing and fighting with other people? So and that's one thing that I just hold on to. Just like, be positive. Like, you can always learn something positive from a negative situation. Always.
Amen.
It's always a lesson to be learned.
Amen. And it's like, that's literally the heartbeat of what I teach, the process I use, which is called your story to your glory. Yeah. Because no matter what is happening, it's like we become who we are because of what happens. And if we want to stay in it, I call it like sitting in the shitty diaper. It's like, why would you want to stay in the shitty diaper? Like, let's, and it's sometimes, and I get it, grief and healing, like, it takes time. It's not like always instantaneous, but you have to be willing. I always say all spirit needs is a tiny bit of willingness. And so you creating, like, you sharing with yourself today, I'm just so excited. And I hope if you're listening to this, if you can hear the sound of my voice, if you are listening to this right now and you know of a family, or you know of a person or people who could really benefit from this, and whether it's a family of color or your white friends or whoever, that could benefit from knowing about Know to Patterns, knowing about Courtney and her work, you guys, please, please, please share this episode. And Courtney, can you tell folks all, like, the different ways to find you on social media or the Know to Patterns, and can you break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. So my website is CourtneyDaniel.com. And on Facebook, I can be found at Know to Patterns, as well as Courtney Daniel. And on Instagram, I'm at the CD brand.
Can you spell that? The CD? Is that CD brand?
Yes, THECDBRAND.
All right, the CD brand. And so the Courtney Daniel, just so you guys know, it's Courtney with an EY. Right? Yeah, because I'm Karen Kenney, and everybody always they forget the second E, and they always like spell it wrong. So I'm always like just trying to help people out. And is there any final things, any final thing that we didn't touch upon, or something that you want them to know about that we didn't cover? I always just like to make sure that I did my job and allowed you to, welcomed you to say whatever you felt like you wanted to say. Is there any final thoughts or?
Yes, I would love if you feel that this was a great episode, please do share. And also, if you're wanting to join an online community where you feel like you can have these conversations, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and just to talk about race issues, or just growing up in New Hampshire, or just being an ally, or just ways that you can support, I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email at no spam, please. info@CourtneyDaniel.com. Again, info@CourtneyDaniel.com. I look forward to just hearing from the community and working with the community, and just, building something strong here in New Hampshire that I know would not only support New Hampshire, but also probably other states and surrounding states as well.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about New Hampshire. It only takes it doesn't take that long to cross into Maine, into Massachusetts, into other places. We're all very much connected. And it's just Courtney, thank you so much. And you guys, I'm a member. I'm one of the founding members of Noted Pattern. So come join us. And I think it's wicked important. You guys know me. I'm a straight shooter. I don't like to waste anybody's time. I wouldn't talk about it if I didn't believe in it. So thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure. It's been so fun. And I can't wait. Here's what I feel like. I feel like it's like this little seed that's been planted, and we have no idea. You have no idea how and where this is going to go and grow. So I think it's going to be fantastic to kind of see how this exponentially expands through the Granite State. So just thank you for being, as I always say, brave enough and ballsy enough to go first and say yes, and to follow the call of your heart, and to have that kind of fearless faith that you were given the assignment. You didn't have to say yes, but you did. So I love that you did. So thank you so much. And you guys, thanks for tuning in. As I always say, wherever you go, please, may you leave the people, the place, the animals, the environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.